Good morning folks, and welcome to the workshop of Armitage Leather. We're going to be making a pouch. Who doesn't want to make a pouch? This is just one video in a series of videos looking at pouches specifically. All the designs and templates, totally printable, and you can print off the designs. They're in the pack, glue them to card, and you can work from them. There's a whole video on your template, so you can have a look at that. You can go to my website www.armitageleather.com/shop, and it's £12 to download the pack. It's 40 odd pages, crammed full of information. If you print all the templates off, and some of the pages you have to print twice because there's a duplicate for different ends, you'll end up with 10 different designs of pouch. Now, if you were to use this pack just to cut your teeth, fantastic, you're going to learn so much. The video is going to help, the pack's going to help. If you want to make bushcraft items, perfect, you can make these pouches as intended, make 10 of each one, take them to a show, sell them, fund your craft. Awesome, and kudos to you for that. Your other option, and this is where I'd like to lean you towards, is to look at the value of the techniques contained in the pack and the videos. Also in the pack is a large explanation on increasing the size and looking at your seam tolerances of each pouch to turn it into a larger pouch, a bag, whatever you want it to be. So it's looking at taking that skill set and transferring it onto bigger items once you're comfortable with your techniques. So if you struggle with any of the techniques needed to make this pack or any one of the packs contained in the series of videos, you can go to my Vimeo channel. It's an online resource of multiple videos, not just on the pouches or the techniques using the pouches. It covers a whole range for many different items. All the tools and materials used in the videos to make these pouches are listed at the back of the pack. They're all hyperlinked, so if you keep the pack online, you can just click and it'll take you straight to it. If you have any questions or see any glaring mistakes, drop me an email, let me know, I'll adjust. In this video, we are going to look at the rounded pouch with a gusset. So, print off your pack, get your templates cut, and we're ready to work. Here is a repeat of everything that we did in the flat pouch, in addition to adding a gusset. This increases the volume of the pouch that we're making. Now, a pouch of this size with a gusset isn't particularly that useful. We can do all sorts of bits and pieces with it, but the pouch really, or the design, really comes into its own when we begin to increase its size. And you'll notice specifically in this section of the pack that we've got the details of what to do and how to make it, but there's a chapter on increasing the size of the pouch to suit your needs, and that's what this is. This is not a case of just making a pouch this size. This is how you make this pouch, and then you choose the size, and the instructions on how to increase it are included. But think of this as a bit of a play pouch. Think of it as an idea if you want. I mean, to be fair, this is what we're making. This is a fantastic little addition to the end of a bag. If you're making a messenger bag or something like that with a nice deep gusset, you can add one of these either side, or you can add a couple of these to the front of a gusset, or you can put, if you want to, a belt loop on the back, and you've got a couple of belt pouches. You are limited by your imagination. You do with this what you wish, but we're going to discuss how to make it. So we're going to get rid of the pack. We're going to keep it in view because we can refer to it, so we'll set that off to one side, and then we have our larger templates. Now you will see written on the templates, round pouch with gusset back, round pouch with gusset front. If we refer back to our round pouch flat, we can see the distance between these lines is shorter. The reason for this will fold on the flat, so it only needs a certain amount of distance to bend over. This one bends around a gusset, so there's a greater volume at the top here, so we need to add space here, and if you increase the size you need to increase the distance between these lines as well. And just to polish off one final piece, you will notice that these two pieces, to all intents and purposes, are identical. The labelling is different, just so we can put this with this one, this with this one. These sections are all identical, these sections are identical. The only difference between this pack and this is the distance in the gap there, but make sure you use the right pack for the right pouch. So what we can do with this, and we can pop that one away with our instruction sheet, and that's a standalone pack for use when we want to make that pouch, and we do the same with this. Now I have here a piece of 2.5mm Butteroo or Botero, however you wish to term it. It's Italian leather, but the reason that I'm using this in this case is it is sold by AA Crack here in the UK, and I know you Americans love hearing about the leather that I use in the UK because you can't get hold of it. But this is sold by District Leather Supply and Rocky Mountain Leather in the US. So you can buy this Botero or Butteroo, however you want to say it, in the States and in the UK and in pretty much Europe as well, because it's Italian. It's very similar in composition to the Lamport, feels a little firmer on the finish. It's dyed through veg tan shoulder, it's nice and stiff, perfect for this sort of thing. So we are going to take our templates. Now you will notice that I've already marked the holes on this, and there's a reason for this and we'll come to that. But this is a 3-part pouch, and the 3 parts are the back section, which forms the back, the bend and the flap, the front section and the gusset. But for the time being we are going to cut out our 2 sections, front and back. Same process as we've done before, and I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to put a press stud on this, so I want a nice 4mm hole punch, so I can pop that bang in the centre there, mark that, and that's my hole punch. I can then mark the top hole where I've marked my stitching, and I can then begin to scribe around the outside for my line to cut, like so. And when I remove that, I have my 2 stitch holes marked, the external line to follow and my hole to punch. So I shall set my front section nice and high because I want to use the rest of the leather, mark where my hole is going to go, and then scribe around the outside for cutting. And we are good to go. The only thing I didn't do there was to mark the top 2 holes for the stitching, but it would be easier to cut it out, put the template back on, than it is try and put the template on now. So we are ready to cut out. What I am going to do before I cut out is I'm just going to tap out those 2 holes to ensure I have my marks for my press stud. Beautiful. Cuts a dream. Now I'm going to fall back with this leather to the clicker's knife and see how this cuts, and exactly the same again. I'm going to hold the knife nice and far back, nice and low, and I'm just going to drag this knife around the line as if I am scribing the line to score, nothing else. The knife will cut. I just don't want to start fighting the leather because that's where we slip. So let me carry on, cut these two pieces out and come back when we're done. We have the two pieces cut out, the front and the back, and in addition we have our gusset already, and the sizes for these are all in the pack. But if you increase the size of the pouch, be conscious you need to increase the size of the gusset. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean up these edges. Now these are nice cuts, but there is the possibility that they're not absolutely bang on. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue them together with a little bit of PVA, and we'll just offer a bit of a bead on the inside of the front section, and we will glue these together. Give it a quick press, at which point then we can tidy up those edges. So we've glued the front to the back, and in truth, if your cuts are neat enough, you don't need to do this. I mean, we have a look at this, we've got quite a good line. These two pieces are not going to be sat next to each other. There's going to be a gusset between, but there's nothing like having it absolutely bang on. And one of the main reasons that we want the level of consistency between the front and the back is we are going to be making a row of holes around the outside, and we want exactly the same number of holes on the front as we have on the back, because we will be doing 2 rows of holes with the same number down the gusset. And if we have 57 on the front and 58 on the back, that just twists the pouch and makes everything go wrong. So if we go to the lengths of gluing these two pieces together, ensuring that our edges are absolutely bang on, then we don't run the risk of having a misaligned hole on the back. And we can see there, just a little bit of sanding is just bringing up those edges beautifully. So what I shall do is I shall just give that a little bit of love, give it a couple of licks with a sanding block, and when I'm happy that they are even and consistent as that's getting there, I shall take them apart, and we'll come back when I've done that. Edges nicely sanded and cleaned up, happy that they are consistent and absolutely bang on. So the next thing to do now would be to run our stitch line around the outside of our front section. Always remember, I've set my dividers to 4mm because that matches my line on my pattern. So start short, stop short. We're looking at that 4mm start, and we're running round nice and clean. And what we can do is just pop a mark at the top of that line, 4mm in. So that's representative of our dot on our pattern. Now we know, because I've pre-pricked this, and this is exactly the same size, there is no variation to it at all. If I run my stitch line around the outside, then that's going to be absolutely spot on. So I'm going to put a piece of card under this so it doesn't mark the leather. What I can do is start off first hole here, and I have two choices. I can give it a gentle tap, or I can walk the line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk the line, because we're constantly looking for confirmation of what we're doing being right. When you get into the swing of this, these are steps that you can leave behind, but whilst you're getting your feet under you, it's good practice. So what we will do is we'll start off on that mark, and then we will walk the line with our iron to ensure that we have all of our stitches in the right position. No long, no short stitches. So let me do this, come back and we'll have a look. So there, we've walked to the line with our two-prong iron. With our two-prong iron, it's like an iron but it's different. And we have come up with 59 holes. So we want 59 holes at the back. We know that with the consistency of our dividers creating that line, these two pieces of leather are exactly the same size, that we could, in truth, centre our fine scratch awl into that hole and just tap through to the other side. Just give it a gentle smack, and then we turn it over and we have 2 marks to follow. At which point then what we can do is we can travel from that mark around to this mark here. We also have the option of placing our template over the top and using the marks as well. But the idea behind doing it this way is if you do have a little bit of variation, you do get a little bit heavy with the sanding and change the size, then these are options to bring you back on track. And we can see that that mark there, bang on 4mm from the edge of the leather, and we'll start there and we'll spin our dividers around back up to this mark here, and again bang on 4mm in. And what we can do, a laborious task, again this is one of the processes that you will fall away from as you naturally begin to become comfortable with these techniques, is we can walk the line again. In walking the line again, we confirmed that we are creating 59 marks on the back of this piece of leather. When you're comfortable doing that, drop it, because you will just know. So let me make my marks, ensure that I've got 59 on the back as well as the front. Having counted our holes on the back, counted our holes on the front, had a look to make sure it matches up with our pattern, we're now ready to move forward. So remember, never pull the leather apart, separate with a bone folder. We don't want to stress the leather any more than we have to. And what we're going to do now is going to make our holes a proper. And again, yes, this is a task. When you become adept, you can drop away. But I'm encouraging you to take the time to go through these stages to have a good understanding of what is needed. Now, the nice thing about the 2-prong is we don't really need to hold our leather down with a pulling block to pull the iron out, because it goes in very cleanly and comes out very cleanly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all of my holes on both my front and my back. What I shall do then, because I know I have 59 holes, I shall look at adding 59 holes to the gusset, but we'll look at the gusset when we get there. Let me make the holes front and back first and see where we go. Holes made in my back piece and front piece, they are now ready to go. Counted the holes in the back just to confirm, ended up with 58. Counted the holes on the front, realised also 58, not 59. I miscounted. It's always worth checking. So 58 is the number. I am happy. So I have a piece of the same leather that I've split down a little thinner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to square up one end. So make sure I have, in fact I can use a straight edge to hold the leather. Put the square up against the rule and then just trim off. And then what I'm going to do at the other end is I'm going to make it dead obvious that's not the end to work to, because it can get confusing and we can swap over. So this gusset hasn't been cut to length. It's going to be the holes that determine the length. We have a guideline that we want, which is the circumference of this area here. That's all in the pack worked out for you, but overcook the gusset. Make it a little longer than it actually needs to be, because we can trim it after to the exact measurement once we have the holes, because your hole count will affect the length of the gusset. So I have the end that I'm working to. What I'm going to do is put my 4mm stitch mark at the end of the line, so I know where my first hole is going to be. I can now go to the large iron with the crimson hide, and I can begin to make my holes in my gusset, and 58 is the count. So I shall start off to the left, making sure that that first hole lines up nicely. The first one is always the most important, and what we can do there is just give it a kiss and have a look and ensure we're happy, which we are. So give that a smack. We're now going to go to the pulling block, because we've got 12 teeth in the leather, to make sure we don't stress the leather, and pull that out. Now that's 12, so what I can do is I can overlap 4 teeth, and that'll give me 8 extra holes, and that'll give me a row of 20. So I now have 20 holes. If I overlap 2 every time, I go up in increments of 10. That's now 30. Another 2 overlap. That's 40. Another 2 overlap. That's 50. And now I want 8 extra holes. So if I overlap 2, that's 10. If I overlap 4, that's 8. That will give me a hole count of 58. It's all very clever working that out, but count them. Make sure you have the right amount of holes. And our last 2 holes line up perfectly. So what we're going to do now on this end is we're going to take our 4mm mark, centre of that hole, pop a mark there. That's where we want to trim. We can bring our rule back in, our square edge, pop it on that line, grab a knife and trim, and there we have the gusset for this pouch at the correct length with the correct amount of holes. That is going to work. This will get stitched to this face side up, then it will get stitched to the back flesh side down, and then the whole thing will come together in a nice little S-shaped gusset. Very much like that there. That's what we're after achieving. So, having made the holes in our gusset, we are ready to begin to put it together. But before we do so, there are some finishing pieces that we need to do. Now again, this is shoulder. Shoulder we can cold crease, so we can use a nice little purse crease here, run a line down, close it off, and there we go. Nice little crease at the top of the opening, and we can do exactly the same around the flap. Run that around, curving round the flap as we go, and we are good to go. Nice little bit of detail just to finish that edge off. The next thing that we will do, as we have done before, is to add a nice bevel on the inside of the top of the pouch, on the outside of the top of the pouch. Now, the normal course of events in relation to licking and slicking is the flap and the top section. However, we are stitching this gusset as a lapped seam, which means this will overlap the gusset, so we will see the edges of the pouch. So in addition to the top being licked and slicked, we need to, licked and slicked and beveled, we need to bevel, lick and slick this edge as well. So we will spin it over and we will bevel the back all the way round the outside. Spin it over and do exactly the same from the front. Creating as clean a line as possible. If you can do it in one hit, more so the better. So let's just add some moisture. Get rag and odd to give it a lick, because we know that's what's happening. The dogs do it for me. And we will slick this up. Now this is dyed through leather. It will stay black, but there's a little bit of paleness to it, so I will still add some edge coat. But the important thing for this overlap seam, or a lapped seam as it is we finish all the edges nicely. And to be fair, that's looking rather sharp and smart. So when we put that leather behind it and stitch it on, we have this lovely finished edge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to black up these edges, give them a bit of a wax and give them a polish, do exactly the same on the flap as well. They're both being creased, and once that's done we'll look at adding the hardware before we stitch. Okay, we are almost good to go with our stitching. The last thing left to do is to add the hardware that we've chosen, and in this case it's going to be a 24mm snap. So we'll set the gusset and the flap aside and we'll concentrate on the front section first. So the front section is going to have the male section of the snap and a post, and we will take the anvil. Now I don't have one of the big pull down jobs because I'll be honest, I set these snaps so infrequently it is just not worth having the machine. It would just take up space and all I would do is hang stuff off it. So I use one of these little sets that come with it. It's from Osborne, it's the semi-professional one, and to be fair it costs about 10-15 quid as opposed to 200 or 300 quid for a tool that I would very rarely use. Ever so simple. Take the anvil, which is shaped to the back of the post, set the post on the centre, set the male section over the top of that, the setting tool in the middle, and give it a thump. Ideally do it on a log, but to be fair that's set. Turn it over, we now have the dome. Take the cap, put the flap over the cap upside down, put the female section over the top, setting tool on top, and exactly the same. Give it a couple of good thumps, jobs are good and nice and tight, and that just locks on like so. So that's sorted. The next thing for us to do is to stitch this together. the order of process is going to be stitch the front to the gusset to the back. So let's go to the clam, have a look at that coming together. Okay, so we're good to go. We're going to start off with our front section and our gusset, and what we will do is we'll work out which side we want to stitch first, and we'll just assist the lining up process with a couple of needles. Now, we're not going to get everything to sit in the clam perfectly, so we're going to have a little bit of a jiggle and pin it as best we can. So I've got a bit sticking out here, and we're just going to have to cope because it's a lap seam, so I've only got 4mm of leather actually overlapping itself. Now, the usual format, we start as we mean to finish, so that will be with 2 back stitches, so therefore I'm going to start on the 3rd hole. No glue. The 2 pieces are most definitely separate, and the idea behind this is what you will find as you stitch is it will feel a little awkward because it's trying to bend around the curve of the leather. However, if you persevere and you stitch every hole in order, you will find that the gusset will naturally bend in the direction it needs to go, and it will look good. But there'll be a couple of times where you're thinking it's not going to fit, it's not going to work. Don't worry, it's going to fit, it's going to work. If your holes are all spot on, if you have the right number of holes or the same number of holes on the front as you do on the gusset, and you don't miss a hole by accident, nothing will go wrong. Now, if you're struggling with the stitching, have a look at my Vimeo channel. Here, for my benefit, I'm stitching left-handed, left-hand priority. This is the modern style of stitching where everything has been pre-pricked and no awl is being used, so I don't need to stitch from the back, and I'm just going to carry on stitching until this is complete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue until we get towards the bend, and then I shall come back and show you how the gusset naturally bends itself round the shape of the leather. So here we've got the gusset wanting to carry on in a straight line, yet we've got the front section curving round, and the idea now is to begin to encourage the gusset to follow the front section. So all we're doing is, it's nothing special, it's not any clever trickery, it is just continuing going through the next available hole. So the next available hole on the front section, the next available hole on the gusset, and as it moves you've got to find it because the gusset is trying to wobble out of place, so you've got to hold it until you can see it. Now everything about this is black, so I'm stitching black on black, so visually it's a little harder to detect, but nonetheless it's still there. And again, the gusset's trying to go straight, the holes are misaligned, so you pull that back in, you're in charge. And even if you angle the needle a little bit to get to the hole, by the time you add that tension, that's pulling those 2 holes together. And again, we're finding that hole with the needle, completing our stitch, and as we apply tension we can see that pulls round. It's incremental. We're only stitching just under 4mm of leather at a time, so it will bend round that leather 4mm at a time. I'm only going to do a few more because if I do a couple of 3 more stitches, you will see this gusset naturally being pulled around that corner. You can see this curve beginning to appear at the top, and it's more important now than ever because we've got the 2 holes separate. We've got more chance of piercing the thread than stitching normally, so checking that we haven't pierced the thread, or if we have, deal with it, is vital. Otherwise you'll end up with a right old mess going on. And we're back on the straight, and we can see everything lines up. Now, in years gone by, this would have been done with a bit of glue. All the leather would have been pricked, and you'd be going through it with an awl. Much higher skill set is required, and you need to know what you're doing. Breaking it down and pre-pricking all the parts turns it into a little bit of a kit, and all you've really got to do is lace it together if you like, but you're lacing it together with a nice saddle stitch so it looks well stitched. So it's not cheating, it's looking at how something goes together. This is no different to an item that would be stitched traditionally. It is as strong, as functional, as beautiful, but far more achievable than trying to battle through all the old techniques with an awl. And we can see there that we've not put these 2 pieces of leather together before this point. This is the first time we've not even measured the gusset. We haven't had to. We know each stitch starts 4mm from the end. We know we've got 58 holes. So we've marked 4mm from the end for our first stitch. We've added 58 holes and then marked 4mm from the last stitch. That is the length of our gusset. We don't need to measure, we don't need to get mathematical, tied up and worried about it not working. We know if we get those holes right, it will work. Proof of the pudding. It does work. And there we have the front of our little pouch, and the gusset pulled round nicely. Now all we need to do here is begin to encourage this around, and we can do this at the bench. Suffice it to say, it will pull itself round, but nonetheless, look at that, that's lovely. So exactly the same again. Let me get some more thread. Let me pause you for a minute, get myself set up, and come back when I'm ready. Set up, ready to go. We've stitched the front to the gusset, that's worked a dream. It's time now to stitch the gusset to the back. And again, very, very little changes. Now, our prime stitch is going to be the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our back section into the clam. Our front section with the gusset, we are just going to leave hanging. It's exactly the same as we've done before, because we want to pull it round. But we're not going to squeeze it all into the clam, it's just going to get too squished and mucked up. So we're going to leave it hanging. Now the first stitch or two, before we actually catch that, we're going to need to keep on catching our leather, because it will keep on falling at the back and moving out of place. So it's not until we forget the first couple of stitches in place that this holds together. So a little bit fiddly to start with. Once we get that first stitch in, it will begin to come together nicely. And fortunately you can't see the back where it's dancing all over the place. There we go, he's done. So we're going to lean this up, get it in the right position, give it some tension. Happy days. And then one more stitch away from us, pinch hold of it so it stays in position, otherwise it will pull out again with that stitch. Lock that stitch in, making sure it's in the right position. Beautiful. And now continue stitching towards us, and you will find again all the holes will begin to line up in the right position. We can see it kicking up there where it keeps on wanting to move. We'll pull it back. You're in charge. You tell the leather where you want it to go, not the other way around. And before we apply that final bit of tension, just hold it in position, put the tension on that bit there, and then finish off there. And then carry on. So let me turn it round. So what I'm doing is I'm pinching the back section in the clam and leaving this front section hanging. And that's how I'm stitching it. So let's see if I can stitch this away from me. Right-handed. This will bend the old perception a little bit. Right, so, and it's just a case of grabbing every hole in order. If you have the right number of holes, it will just come together. However complicated it looks, it will just come together. Folks, let me crack on, get this finished, and then you can see what you think of this little pouch. I'm not showing you the best way. I appreciate that. I am showing you the easiest way. Once you've got a grip of the easiest way, then you can work towards the best way. And it's building your skill set up incrementally. That's what this is all about. If there's even just one minor comment or one minor tip that you find useful and helpful, that's good enough. That's good enough. If the whole thing is useful and you can make pouches from it, that's brilliant. But I'm not doing it for any other reason than to try and get you on track, up to speed, and working towards pushing your envelope of your skill set. Folks, you're watching me stitch. You can do that on any number of videos. I will carry on with this and we will come back once I have finished. Now, this is the back, this is the front, or I'm left-handed, I've stitched this as the front and this is the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish my stitches on the inside here, because there's less likelihood of you spotting those trims on the inside of the gusset than on the back. Because you pick these pouches up, you spin them round, you look at the front, you look at the back. So let's trim it in such a way that we don't actually see our trimmed threads going on. Just going to apply some heat. And they just disappear. And then what we're going to do there, I'm just going to encourage it round. We could do this back on the board, we'll go back to the board in a moment. But ultimately, there is our little pouch. Not too shabby, eh? It's quite sweet. Right, let's take it to the board, clean up these edges. What I'm going to do is give these a quick sand, and then we'll bevel, slick and black them up. So, back to the board. So that's the pouch stitched together. We've got this lovely curvature going on, and what we can do is we can encourage that back seam to stand up a little more, just sort of running a stick around the inside just to getting it to lift. And then we've got that lovely shape occurring on the inside and that S shape pattern occurring back here. And we can also then begin to encourage the front section to bend a little bit more at the seam, giving it again some more shape, and you'll find it also a little more volume as well. And it's all about just working it in, and we get a lovely definition occurring from the front of our pouch. Now, just to finish off, we'll take our beveler and we will trim or bevel these edges at the back here. Keeping it nice and neat as we go, trying, if we can, to do it in one piece. And then the bit on the back. Now this is going to be a little problematic because we've got the pouch itself sitting on the other side. In fact, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to have to take this to the board because this is moving. I shall push this up against the edge of the board and bevel, but as I'm pushing, that's moving. So let me go off camera, bevel this up against the board and come back. And there we go, beveled. So next thing to do is get one of the dogs to lick it, and then we can slick it. Number 2, I suspect, would work well for this. And we'll ride that edge in. There we go, we're not getting it quite as flat. This is holding it up. Nonetheless, it is working towards what we want. We get a lovely sheen up here. Those fibres bonding down, and we are pretty much there. Folks, it's simple enough to add a gusset, and the object of this video is not to teach you how to make a pouch like this. It's more about teaching you how to add a gusset, and we've had a look at a very simplistic form, a lapped seam gusset which makes the front nice and proud. If we did a simple seam gusset where the front is stitched exactly the same as the back, we have this C shape going on, it sits very flat, and that in itself is gorgeous. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an option and let you see that you have options in relation to bringing some life to an item and a little bit of depth. And we can see there that we've got quite a bit of depth going on. I'm going to mess with that edge a little later on, but we get ourselves a nice cable. In fact, I have one right next to me. So let's just wind this cable up. So how many times do we go to a case to find a cable all tangled? In truth, what we can do, spool our cable up, pop it in our pouch, and it's in the same condition when we left it as we need it again. That has covered 2 of the pouches: flat, round and gusseted round. Folks, I hope you're getting an insight. I hope it's beginning to dawn on you the scope that you've got in relation to these little pouches and what you can do with them. And even if you just use them as practice pieces, but if you make these and flog these as earphone cases, cable cases, coin pouches, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you can make a little bit of money off them, brilliant, go for it. But use them as practice pieces. Now, once you've got a grip, make 3 or 4 of them. When you've got an understanding of the technique, when you're happy with your process, change the design, change the gusset, make it bigger, put a strap on it, turn it into a bag. Let's look at the scope that this little pouch will really give you. Make this huge. There's a tote there. Make it 10 inches wide and 14 inches long. We've got a tote. Any number of things. Go play, go enjoy. When you've got a grip with those, move on to the short gusset pouches, which will be next in this series of videos, and will give you a whole other scope and a different toy to play with. Enjoy, go and have fun.